Welcome to FutureBank Today, a community dedicated to driving innovation in our financial institutions. This is your host, Jim Kittredge, and today's topic is how community banks can compete with the big banks and win. In today's marketplace, the combined assets of the 10 largest banks now exceed $10 trillion. Most of that growth comes from two sources: mergers and acquisitions, and taking market share from smaller, often community banks. So how are the large banks taking this market share? Is it their deep menu of financial services, their never-ending list of new products? Maybe. For a small percent of highly affluent customers, this could actually be attractive. But overall, it's not a very large driver. What about the big banks' cutting-edge tools? Maybe, again for a small percent, but only those that are really early adopters, as even small banks today offer things like online banking, mobile banking, and even more advanced services such as remote check deposit. In fact, there are few technical services in retail banking that large banks offer that smaller banks are struggling to offer today. If they're not offering better products or better technology, is it that they have better customer service? In almost every customer service survey, whether it was J.D. Power, Consumer Reports, Bankrate, Prime Research, small banks have consistently scored higher than the big banks when it comes to customer service. Well, if it's not customer service, what about bank rates and bank fees? Overall, every survey says that small institutions on average offer better rates and have lower fees, some by as much as 50%, and even more so if you include credit unions and online banks in those surveys. So what about product flexibility? Again, smaller institutions have a huge advantage because they have the opportunity to offer really flexible products. Because they are small and because they have a close relationship to their customers. They don't have gauntlets of 10 different committees to have to run a custom offering through. And lastly, what about having personal relationship between the customer and the institution? Well, not surprisingly, this is where small banks really outshine their larger competitors. So with all of those major advantages for a small institution and just a few slight disadvantages, why can't smaller banks compete with the bigger ones? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's called distribution access. Today, the top 10 banks have branches and ATMs that not only blanket a city, not only blanket a whole state, but the top 5 actually blanket the whole country. And all customers fear that they will be in a city outside of where they live and need access to a branch to cash a check, to use an ATM, or deposit funds. That one distinction is what allows big banks to thrive and chokes off the growth in community-based institutions. So short of opening up branches across the country, is there an innovation that could be developed that would allow community banks to not only compete, but win? The answer is actually quite simple. They need to build out a nonprofit, community bank-owned entity that offers a cloud-based universal teller workstation. You got to be asking yourself, what's a universal teller workstation? Well, a universal teller workstation is just a basic teller platform, relatively simple, that can handle all of the retail customers' needs at any member branch, regardless of that customer's primary bank. Here, let me explain a little further of how it would work. A member bank would reserve one teller line that has the capability to process foreign transactions as local transactions for basic retail banking needs. Since today, all banks have an online presence, building a cloud service that would allow for access to the current balance should be a pretty straightforward proposition. Additionally, most community banks are only on a handful of different software platforms that exist in the marketplace, so building that service should be even more straightforward. And with current advances in biometrics, a simple palm print, for example, can be used to guarantee that that customer is who they say they are. In addition, we would limit withdrawals, just like we do with ATMs today, further reducing any risk. Think of it from a customer perspective. The average community bank has somewhere between 3 and 7 branches, where customers would do the vast majority of their banking. But they would also have access to the bank across the whole country as long as they were at a participating member bank. And at any one of those other banks, they could deposit funds, they could cash a check, they could withdraw funds. In fact, any of the basic stuff that's done at a teller line today. And by keeping this shared entity as a joint-owned property, costs and fees can be kept in check by using a netting algorithm. That is, if 5 of my customers used another bank this month and 5 customers from other banks used mine, well, then there should be no additional fees beyond the shared cost to manage that shared service. We could take a similar approach using the same thing with ATMs. So what's the bottom line? Community banks need to stop competing with each other and start jointly competing with the big banks. And if they don't do something like this, quite frankly, their days are actually numbered, as the big banks gobble up more and more of the customer relationships. I know this is easier said than done. I don't know of any other way for a community bank to compete with the largest banks in the country. But if they were to do this, I think competing would be on a much more level playing ground than they're experiencing today. And lastly today, I want to spend just a minute and answer the most common question that I receive. And that question is, how exactly do I make these videos? So I'll give you the steps. After a significant amount of research, I then laid down an audio track using the open source software called Audacity. I then convert that to an MP3 file and I turn it over to a person named Jessie Lynn Corson, who lives in Southern California and is an accomplished graphic artist, who then uses her skills to animate my words using a tool called VideoScribe. And from that, she's able to produce an animated video combining my words with her animations. It's working really well, and I hope you all continue to enjoy it. At least from all the feedback I'm getting, it seems like you are. Thank you for your time today, and stay tuned for next week when I address the topic, what is the future of our branch networks